Hello and welcome. I am Exolite and this is my channel. Today we're going to talk about the very strange, peculiar case of Jacob Gray, who disappeared when he had decided to go on a camping trip. He was riding a bike and had a little camper attached to the back with all of his gear. He wasn't seen alive again. Before we get started, if you would like to give this video a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. If you would like to be subscribed at any time during the video, please go ahead and do so. And if you would like to be notified when my content goes live, please click that bell. And let's get started. In April of 2017, Jacob Gray rode his bicycle during a rainstorm into Washington State's Olympic National Park and vanished. The 22-year-old's bike and camping gear were discovered near the Soul Duck River, but otherwise, there was no trace of him. Several months of search and rescue missions uncovered nothing. Now, to start off with, a couple of things that were strange about his bike being found. He was towing a trailer full of camping gear. He was going to go camping. That was April 5th. He planned to travel to the Daniel J. Evans Wilderness Area in the Olympic National Park, and then he was going to head east. In this case of Jacob missing, nobody reported him missing. It was the fact that some rangers had seen that his bike and trailer had gone untouched for most of a day that made them curious about what had happened to the rider. Now, Jacob Gray was originally from Santa Cruz in California. He went out on April 5th by himself. Now, a couple of the things that are weird from the get-go. He was towing his trailer full of camping gear on the back of his bike. He planned to travel to the Daniel J. Evans Wilderness in the Olympic National Park in Washington State, and then he was going to head east. In this case, no one reported Jacob missing. He was supposed to be going camping. It was the rangers who found his bike and his trailer full of camping gear that started to become curious as to what had happened to the rider, because it looked like he just disregarded all of his equipment on the side of the road. The bike, the trailer, most of his gear were found about 6.5 miles up the Soul Duck Hot Springs Road on April 6th. Soul Duck is the Quileute Indian words for sparkling waters. Please forgive me if I just murdered that. It's even worse that I grew up in Washington State and probably still just murdered that. Go ahead and correct me down below if you would. So, something strange about this was that they found some bows on the ground, arrows sticking into the ground around the back of the trailer. On that afternoon, Ranger John Bowie, or if you're from Texas, you would say Bowie, checked the area around the bike. They wondered maybe the cyclist had taken a short walk to the river to get some water. If he had slipped in and he couldn't get out, he would have succumbed to the freezing water. It was very cold in the mountain. In April, there was still snow on the ground. They thought maybe the rider had hitchhiked up to the hot springs. Bowie called his fellow officer, Brian Ray, and asked him to recheck the area the next morning. And the bike and the trailer were still there, untouched, which caused more alarms to go off in their heads. This mystery caught the attention of a journalist whose name is John Billman. John has been investigating missing persons in wild places since the 1990s. And as he writes in his book, The Cold Vanish, Seeking the Missing in North America's Wildlands, he wrote that most disappearances are easy to explain. They have hypothermia, there's falls, avalanches, eaten by a mountain lion, which is actually not true because, as I said in a previous video, there's only been 2 to 4 fatalities from mountain lion attacks since like 1920. But you get the idea. Wild animals. But Billman has long been fascinated by cases that, quote unquote, defy conventional logic. The proverbial vanish without a trace incidents, which happen a lot more and a lot closer to your backyard than anyone thinks, he wrote. According to NAMUS, National Missing and Unidentified Persons Systems, say that really fast, more than 600,000 people go missing in the United States every year. 600,000 people. Anywhere between 89 to 92% of those that go missing are recovered every year, either alive or deceased. But then you have the other ones. Some who disappear into the wild under unclear circumstances, never to be seen again, and without a trace. Neither the Department of Interior, which oversees the National Park Service, or the Department of Agriculture's U.S. Forest Service keeps track of these missing people, which, by the way, according to David Paulides, he was told that he could get a copy of the people missing from Yosemite National Park if he paid them $1 million. So I think that it's clear that they do keep track of missing people in national parks. They keep track of the number of animals in the national parks. I believe that they would keep track of the number of missing people in national parks. They just don't want it advertised because the national parks bring in millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars for the United States every year. And if you were afraid to go because something might happen to you, you wouldn't go, and the country would lose a huge amount of revenue. Now, Jacob's bike and trailer were in full working order. Nothing appeared wrong, and there was a lot of gear in that trailer. The rangers checked the hot springs resort. No one had seen him, and they felt sure that the owner had probably fallen into the river. They were quoted as saying, "We'll check the river in the summer when the water goes down." Which, by the way, that was your family member in that position. That would be hard to hear. On Friday, April 7th, Ranger Ray found a list of phone numbers among the things which identified the owner of the trailer as Jacob Gray, and he called Jacob's sister, Mallory. She told Ray to phone their parents in Santa Cruz right away. A water filter and a Camelback backpack were both missing from the trailer, according to a list provided by the family. They didn't know of anything else that appeared to be missing. The Clallam County Sheriff's Office picked up the search and had about 30 people and dogs comb the area the next day. They found nothing. Volunteer trackers from the Olympic Mountain Rescue were finally requested and searched the area on Wednesday, April 12th, which was nearly a week after the discovery of the bike. They found evidence that someone had swapped out their hiking boots for running shoes. Keep this in mind. It had been a rainy day when he went up there, and there was still snow on the ground. He took off his hiking boots and he put on running shoes. Then walked to the river's edge, slipped and fell into the river, leaving a mark on a mossy rock. Downstream, 30 yards or so, there were signs that someone may have tried to scramble out of the river. A state fisheries biologist, not the swiftwater rescue divers, were assigned to monitor 2 log jams to search for Jacob. Rangers photographed the bike and the trailer and the gear and then loaded everything up and locked it in a boathouse on Lake Crescent, where they could take detailed inventory of everything that was left. Dog teams began searching at 5 p.m. on Thursday, April 13th. By this time, it was clear that they were searching for a body and not a live cyclist. 2 cadaver dogs hit on a log jam, which could have meant that there was a corpse trapped underneath. It also could have meant that cadaver material had washed in from the bank and the scent molecules had swabbed onto the log. But all the log jams for 12 miles on either side of the bike area were searched, and there was no signs of a body. And this is a little bit of contradiction in the story of what happened. They found evidence that somebody tried crawling out of the river. Now, did that person slide back in? I guess we didn't know. That's why they had people check the log jams. Then the scent of a cadaver was found, but there was no cadaver found in the next 12 miles, and they didn't have a dive team to look under the log jams to see if there was a body there. Searches continued in Olympic National Park through that week before the park moved into a limited continuous search, which basically means that it was not actively searching on April 14th. However, on Saturday, April 15th, the Clallam County Search and Rescue got involved, and with the help of some volunteers, they worked the west side of the river on Olympic National Forest land, as well as inside the park. Flyers were tacked up on park kiosks and in gas stations in Port Angeles to the east and the logging town of Forks to the west. Those of you who know about sparkly vampires will know that Forks, Washington is where the Twilight movies are set. So that gives you an idea of what that land looks like. A pair of Burnside brand shorts in Jacob's size was found a couple of miles downstream, and he'd been given a similar pair as a Christmas gift, which was sent to the crime lab in Seattle for DNA testing. The county search was then scaled back on April 16th. The family was surprised to find out that no ranger-assisted search had been launched. The Coast Guard, based in Port Angeles, was not requested, and neither were aircraft from Whidbey Island Naval Air Station, which assists with some Olympic National Park rescues. Dog teams were almost entirely volunteer-led, and the family had lined up a willing team, but the park told them no. Park said that they had another volunteer team in mind, but that they were hesitant to even request from them. In July of 2017, more than 100 search and rescue volunteers from across western Washington searched along the river but were unable to find any clues. Jacob had, for all intents and purposes, vanished from the park. Over a year later, late in the afternoon, on August 10th, 2018, a field crew of Olympic National Park employees and volunteers found abandoned equipment and clothing in a very remote area of the Olympic National Park near Hoh Lake. Coincidentally, on Friday, August 10th, 2018, late in the afternoon, a team of biologists who made a trip into the mountains to study marmots found Jacob's remains, clothing, gear, a wallet, near the top of a ridge above Hoh Lake, 5,300 feet above sea level and at least 15 miles away from where he had left his bike. His body wasn't found near a trail. In fact, it was off trail. And in April, that terrain would have been snowy and prone to avalanches, not some place where a guy wearing tennis shoes would have gone off to and left his bike and nearly all of his gear along the side of the road 15 miles ago. The remains were found on a treeless ridge, and they would have been able to be seen by air had somebody called in air rescue. Hoe Lake is about 10 miles from the Soul Duck trailhead. The trail climbs through the old forest growth and alpine slopes before arriving at the lake, 5,300 feet above sea level. The next morning, law enforcement rangers searched the area and found more clothing and skeletal remains. The clothing matched what the family had said that Jacob would be wearing, according to Penny Wagner, a person for the Olympic National Park. The identity of the remains were confirmed on August 18, 2018, by the King County Medical Examiner's Office, according to the Clallam County Deputy Coroner. The area where the remains were found is not described as a camping site, nor did he have a campsite, and what was initially found did not make investigators believe that foul play was involved. Before the body was found, Randy Gray, Jacob's father, said he wanted to believe his son, who has been described as an avid outdoorsman who enjoyed camping alone, who, aside from taking off his hiking boots and putting on running shoes, was extremely well dressed for the weather. Warm clothing. He wanted to hope that he was out working or fishing somewhere, still living his life. Since Jacob's bike was found on the Hot Spring Road, his father, Randy, had relentlessly searched for his son. He said he lost track of how many times he searched the Soul Duck Valley, and that he searched in many other parts of the country and in Canada as well. So what happened to Jacob Gray, 22 years old? Clallam County Deputy Coroner Christy Wojnowski found that the official cause of death was inconclusive, as the body could only be identified through dental records. An autopsy on Jacob could not be performed. He had a cigarette lighter and insulated clothing. He had plenty of food with him at the scene where the body was found. The authorities believe that it is likely that Jacob succumbed to hypothermia, as there were no signs of trauma to the remains. Which, let's think about this for a minute. They think he just left his bike and trailer in a ditch off the side of the road, put on his hiking shoes, or his running shoes, went to the river, fell in, tried to get out, and died. And also that he managed to get 15 miles away from that bike, at 5,300 feet altitude, and then that's where he died and succumbed to hypothermia. Even though he had dressed for this hike, he had dressed for camping in this weather, and he was wearing, with the exception of his shoes, all warm clothing. And there was no signs of trauma to his remains. So, why did he plan and tell people that he was going to head east, and then instead go west without telling anybody? Why was his bike parked where it was? The trailer was unlocked. His bike was unlocked. It was in full view of traffic, and it had gear laid out. Why were there 4 arrows stuck into the ground? Does that have a meaning? Is that a signal or a sign? How did he travel 5,300 feet above sea level and 15 miles from where he left his bike in the snow? If it wasn't for the fact, it appears to me that he must not have fallen into the river. I don't know. As I said, they based it on the fact that there was a mossy area that looked like somebody had slid in. We don't know what that is for as proof that a human fell in. How did he get hypothermia if he was so well dressed? And why didn't the park call in air help to try and see him, to try and find him? Why didn't they want the volunteer dogs to come? And why were they reluctant to call another team of volunteer dogs? This one is truly a mystery. Thank you for coming to my channel. And again, if you enjoy this content, please leave it a thumbs up. If you would like to be subscribed and you are not, please go ahead and do so. If you'd like to be notified when my content goes live, please click that bell. In a link below, there will be a link to a PayPal fund. We are raising money so that Rob and I, if you stick around enough and you're new, you'll find out who Rob is, so that we can travel through the New England area, filming ourselves at all the haunted spots we can squeeze in on a road trip and putting it up on this channel, which will be a lot of fun. Also, I have new merchandise below, and in my house, September 1st is the beginning of the holiday season. It's like the first day of Halloween. So Christmas is coming. Consider that. Good night.